Happy Thursday, Ron.
Happy Thursday and Happy New Year. This is our first time getting together this year.
2026. Here we are. Whoever thought we'd get past 2025?
Yeah. I mean, the first quarter of this year, quarter of this century has been a tricky one for us.
It has. It has. Well, it's Thursday. We go live every Thursday, unless it's a holiday or something like that. Ron and I spend about an hour just chatting, goofing around, making jokes. And our topics are probably 70% housing, whether it be mortgage or housing, real estate. And then 30%, I'm just making up numbers. 30% of the other stuff is quite often random topics, but there's usually a tie-in to mortgage and housing. But we kick it off usually with a from the gut, and I've got a good one this week. I'm excited about it. Ron, you've got I usually give you a glimpse or somewhat of an insight of what my from the guts are going to be, but what are your thoughts on this week?
Oh, you know what, David, you wouldn't give up the whole story to me, so I can't wait to see how it comes along, and certainly caught my interest.
Yeah. Well, we usually start with the cheers, so let's keep tradition alive. Cheers to you.
Cheers. I have to say, David,
Cheers.
I have natural sound effects behind me, which you guys will hear, the thunder and lightning, which is just raging outside my window. So if you hear it, don't worry.
Good old Scottsdale Phoenix thunderstorms. All right, let's get to our topic. So I'm going to kick it off this week with a from the gut, where I don't know if you've heard of this guy. His name's Max. He owns a jewelry store in the Diamond District in New York, and he went viral. One of the first days, January 1st, January 2nd of this year, he went somewhat viral. He had a bit of an outburst with a competitor of his, and I'm going to talk about that and tie it into branding. And then we're going to get to we've got a few main topics this week, so let's pull up the first one, and Ron, lead the way with that.
Yeah, first we're going to talk about a new trend reversing. We've actually have grown producing LOs in 2025 from previous years, so that's great news. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to talk about employee benefits. And, people don't like to talk about this, but we're just going to tackle how much, they've gone up from the employer standpoint. And I know they have for employees also, but what impact that has, on our industry, on margins and profitability. This is a really interesting one. This is a new, it's a scam for land. It's really interesting. So David, you and I are going to get in the weeds in it, and it's super interesting and something that we all should be kind of familiar with.
Yep. And then I think we've got two topics that are more driven around AI. We're going to skip the rapid fire topics. We've got 5 kind of meaty topics. I don't think we have an intro slide for the AI ones, do we? So with that, let's get to from the gut. All right. Excited about this one. I have never really been a big jewelry guy. Never have been. I've got this little cheap necklace worth pretty much nothing. It's got a charm on it that my dad gave to me over 25 years ago. But I couldn't tell you carat weight off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you the difference between a VVS and a VS diamond. I just recently relearned what those mean, but I couldn't tell you the difference. I wouldn't say no to a Rolex one day, but maybe one day in the distant future. But like most people, as you're scrolling through social media, your feed throws you random stuff that you never ask for. And about a week ago, one of those clips grabbed me. It was Max, the owner of Trax NYC, a New York jeweler, confronting another jeweler owner. McKenna, let's play the video. It's only about 1 minute long. This will give you some context. So let's play that video and then I'll get into it.
Where's my f***ing money? Motherfucker! Where's my f***ing money? Where's my money? I got this f***ing bracelet. Where's my money? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna Doc, mother. You say VVS, I3, 14 karat, and you're using my name. You. Yeah, 6447. Thief! You thief!
Stop, take him.
No! Get the hands off of me, bro. Get your hands off of me, bro. Yeah, bro. Calm down. You give me my money.
You're never gonna see that.
Ron, where in the world am I going with this one?
That's what I asked you earlier.
Yeah. Now, there was a follow-up to that video that happened a day or two later. A face was spat on. Max got his face spat on. Punches were thrown. A guy tried to strangle Max with the chain that he was wearing. It was absolutely nuts. And it's just spiraled from there. Police eventually got involved. And I had no idea what was going on, but I watched the whole thing, then another clip and another, and suddenly it was days later and I was still down the rabbit hole and am today. Before long, I was neck deep in the world of Trax NYC, that guy's company and his inner circle, including this guy named Moses the jeweler. He's another charismatic guy. He's hilarious, incredibly sharp, and seems to be a good guy, just like Max. They've both given away hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars worth of jewelry to help grow their brands. I didn't really expect to care, but here I am, days of watching these guys break down gold prices, talk industry scams, teaching people how to spot fakes and peel back the curtain on what it's like running a brand in the world where trust is everything, where people have affluence, or the people that have affluence are spending hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars on watches and rings. And here's the part that really caught me. The initial video with the confrontation, it wasn't about jewelry. It was about brand theft. That confrontation I first saw, it stemmed from an adjacent business allegedly using Trax NYC's identity. They were pretending to be them, and a $21,000 chain was sold to a customer as if it came from Trax NYC when it didn't. The amount of the sale was inflated, and the carat amount of gold was even faked. I forget what it was. I think they sold it as 14 karat. It was really 10 karat, something like that. And what Max has built isn't just a store. He's built a brand with a very specific tone, personality, and message. When you watch his other videos, he's not this crazy guy that you saw on this clip. He just reached his boiling point, and trust is at the core of his message. He's got 3.1 million followers on Facebook, almost 4 million followers on Instagram. His TikTok isn't quite there yet, but it's growing with about 125,000 followers. And that didn't happen by accident. He showed the work. He told his stories. He built a real connection with people, not just by what he sold, but how he showed up. That's trust, and trust is earned. So when someone takes the very thing you've built, whether it be your videos or your voice or your name, and uses it to close their own deals, that's theft. It's not inspiration. It's not flattery. It's putting on someone else's skin like a costume and pretending to be you. And listen, I'm someone who thinks mimicry is often just part of the game. We all get influenced. We all see things that work and think, how can I do my own version of that? But there's a difference between being inspired by someone's vibe and stealing the entire essence of what makes them valuable. The more I watched, the more I realized Max wasn't mad about some bracelet. He was mad that someone was using his reputation to sell theirs. Over the years, people have copied my work at various companies that I've been at, and I've mostly just laughed it off, but it struck me. I've seen loan officers, real estate agents, and people outside the housing rip content word for word. I've seen excuse me, I've seen local brands steal design templates and just swap out the logo. And I've seen people take someone else's voice or mimic their captions or their colors, their style, and try to pass it off like it was theirs all along. Here's the truth. When you build a brand that actually connects, people are going to copy it. Some of them just admire it. Some of them are learning. Some are trying to figure out their own voice and just uses yours as maybe a springboard. That's not a crime. That's just part of the creative process. But some people, they skip the inspiration phase. They go straight to imitation. And worse, they try to profit off what you've already earned. And that's what happened here. And I get why Max snapped, because when your brand is that personal and someone tries to take it from you, it doesn't just feel like business, it feels like betrayal. It feels criminal. And if you've ever put your name on something that mattered, something big, you know that feeling as well. That's why I think this moment is bigger than just jewelry. It's a reminder for anyone trying to build something that lasts. Your brand has to be yours. Yes, you can be influenced. Yes, you can remix. Yes, you can learn from what's working. But the minute you start blindly copying someone else's content or their tone or name without putting your own spin on it, you're not building a brand, you're building a knockoff. And no matter how shiny a knockoff is, people eventually find out it's fake. So if you're trying to make a name for yourself in any industry, here's my advice. Don't try to be Trax NYC. Don't try to be Little Nessie or Dave or Ron or someone like a Sean Herrero or a Shayla Gifford. Don't try to be anyone but your own self. Let people know, let people know what you stand for. Let them hear your voice. Let them see your face, even when you hate being on camera, and give them something and someone real to trust. Because once you do that, people follow you, people trust you, and you'll never feel the urge to steal from someone else. There you go, Ron. That's my from the gut. Any thoughts?
I love it, David. I love it. And I think, I'm a big advocate of, swipe and adapt, especially since we all freely share. But what the video shows is you can't just steal, the image of a brand or a name and then, succeed unless you actually fulfill their value prop at the same time. And that's what happened in the video is that the jewelry store, the guy ripped off his customers, which the track guy would never do. And so while his competitor was trying to steal his brand, he wasn't fulfilling the brand because he couldn't, because he didn't have, the content within him to be that brand. And that's what you're saying. You can't fake being somebody who you're not. You can aspire to be better. You can aspire to be like someone, but I can't be like them until I internally become that. And you can't just fake it like you're saying. That's one of my takeaways.
Yeah. And the other company, they I think owned by two brothers and a dad, and they actually all three got walked away in handcuffs. I didn't show the video where there was an actual brawl, but that happened a day or two after. And the guy Max, he ended up having red scrapes and all kinds around his neck because one guy grabbed his chain and twisted it, was trying to strangle him basically, and those three other guys got walked away in handcuffs. So very interesting. And I've been on that kick just every third video that shows up on my shorts. I think it's mostly on Facebook. I've trained the algorithm on Facebook that I like that content. So now I'm getting all kinds of jewelry content on my shorts. It's entertaining. It'll probably be gone in 2 weeks, but we'll see.
I'm sure Kelly's happy to see that.
Yeah, I think I showed her that one video. I don't remember, but anyway, that's from my gut, from the gut. I just pick random stuff, but try to tie it into some kind of lesson. So there you go. All right, let's get to our first main. Thank you, Ron. Let's get to our first main topic. Lead the way.
Yeah, let's talk about LO ranks. And David, this is always a really tricky thing because what counts as a loan officer? It does a bank teller count, does a license processor count, does a licensed LOA count. And so over the years, we've started to more narrowly define what a producing LO is. And there's two common measurements. One is, hey, if you have to do at least one loan a year to be considered producing, and that's what we're going to talk about, the ranks of producing LOs based on one loan a year. Now, I think Barry Beebe and MBS Highway in their data, they use one loan a quarter, and their data is drastically different than the data that we're going to share. But what we're going to
Mm.
talk about here is that for the first time in several years, the actual rank, the number of producing loan officers has increased year over year. And as we go to the next chart, it will show you how it's gone over the last few years. We're now at um, we're now at 221,000 productive loan officers as defined by one loan a year. And you can see that had been declining since 2021 and just stabilized in this last year. And we were slightly more producing loan officers this year than in previous years. And so that's good news. I think that's really good news. I think too, what happens, um, and and then let's look at it. Let's look at the next chart and let's look at it as it breaks down between different things. Now, here's the thing: there's four different bars here. The first one, the maroon one, is banks and credit unions. The second one is the broker channel. The third is IMBs, and the fourth is completely irrelevant because it has nothing to do with the topic. But they're just for point of reference, showing that how many real estate agents there are. And we can ignore
Oh,
the real
wow.
estate agent one. Like I said, it really has no relevance to this. I'm not sure why they included it. But what you can see over the last few years, that actual credit union and bank loan officer cores has slightly increased. The broker channel, while still smaller, has significantly increased, while IMBs have decreased. And a lot of the IMB, I think, what happened is a lot of that decrease is, low producing loan officers just being pushed out of the business. And I think that's a lot of the gain too in the broker channel. But you just got, IMBs had to get rid of inefficient assets, and that's really what low producing or no producing LOs are. But a very interesting trend. David, do you see anything in that trend? Does anything surprise you?
Could we go back to the first slide? I had a question there. Yeah. So between 2022 and 23, what's the numbers? What was the drop off?
It was it's like 282 or 283 down to 234.
How many of the loan officers that are coming back in 2025 do you think are new to the industry, or just people that took a year or two off or 3 years off and they just got another job because they weren't making any money, but now they see light at the end of the tunnel and they're coming back?
Well, it wouldn't even be that they're coming back; is that they finally did a loan. Um, because they weren't counted if they didn't do a loan, even if they were trying. David, I've seen plenty of people that show up and don't do loans. Um,
Yeah.
I actually, my sense is though more of it is new loan officers, and the new loan officers are doing much better than some of the legacy loan officers because they don't
Really?
see the same obstacles because they don't have a point of comparison. It's not harder than it used to be. It's just what it is, and so they don't
Yeah.
have an excuse. They just are happy to go out and get the business. I will say, David, that if we were going to use just licenses, I think the total licenses have dropped somewhere between 50 to 60%. So if you use that gauge, which also includes a whole bunch of non-producing people, there's been a much greater shrinkage in that set of numbers than the ones with people doing one loan. And then if you looked at the people doing one loan a quarter, I think that number got down to around 80,000 loan officers that did at least 4 loans a year.
Yeah. And how many were there? Because 2018 was a pretty tough year. How many were there in 2017 versus 18?
So if you go back and then go back 2 years, you know what? The steep up was the same thing. We gained about 25,000 loan officers a year in 2018 to 2019. Same thing with 2017 to 2018. In 2018, we had two tough quarters, but those were only bips, in which was really a downhill run. And so you could easily last out that. It was really literally like 4 months, and so I don't think that put a lot of slowing down. But it's interesting to see just from all licensed loan officers, we lost about 50 to 70%. If you define it as loan officers that did one loan a year, we lost from peak 287 to valley 220, so we lost about 67,000. So we lost about 27%. But if you're going to take producing loan officers, one that did every quarter, that stayed pretty you did not drop as much, and that number is significantly lower. Just interesting numbers, but it's good. It's a good sign for the business. Now, here's the one thing, David, I would wrap up this topic. The key thing here is as we see business starting to increase again, and not significantly, but purchase transactions will be up somewhere between 5 and 10% this year. Overall volume will probably get up to around $2.2 trillion. Well, you're starting to see that survivors benefit because there's fewer people who get to chase more loans now. And so why it may not have the same boom as in the 2020, 2021, but you're starting to get to see possibly more productivity per head than we did in even some of the peak years.
Yeah, the the amount of times that we heard survivors benefits over the last 3 years, we didn't think we'd ever get there. Well, we knew we would, but it just didn't seem like there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. I've used that phrase twice now. But do you think we're really there yet?
I don't think I don't think we're getting out of a tunnel to a boom market. I just think we have a slowly improving environment, where we get 5 to 10% more purchase and, transactions. We get 10% more refi transactions. We get about 10% more volume. It's going to be that way this year, that way next year, probably for a few years as we try to, as wages catch up with the cost of houses.
Yeah. I think we had one more slide. We had 3 total on here. We didn't get to the third.
I don't think we have a
correct?
third one.
I'm showing we've got 3. McKenna?
All right.
Nope, maybe not. Could be a mistake. I thought we had a third one. Okay.
Shoo.
Moving on. So we're going to talk about employee benefits.
Yeah,
Fun
David,
one.
every year, employees, me included, we get so frustrated when it comes to benefits time and our cost of our benefits goes up, I don't know, 10%, 15%. Seems like our benefits are shrunk down. And, there's a lot of frustration and a lot of it's just because we don't understand. And the thing that is really important to understand is that, yes, our portion of our benefits is going up in cost, but we only pay on average about 25% of the overall benefit costs. So if ours goes up, we're only burdening, we're only shouldering the burden of 25% of that increase, while our employers are shouldering the burden of 75% of that increase. And what this next chart is going to show is how much the cost of benefits has gone up over the last 10 years. Now, this is another somewhat confusing chart. And this is a chart from the MBA. And by the way, if you don't subscribe to the MBA chart of the week, you absolutely should. You get great charts like this every single week. But this right here is what this is that orange line is the cost of benefits per sales employee. And the green line below it is the cost of benefits per support full-time employee. And the purple line is the cost of benefit for fulfillment. And then the last bottom line is cost of benefits for servicing. Now, here's the discrepancy between the three, because you're going, oh my gosh, why is that? Well, because salespeople usually earn more money. And because they earn more money, just as a percentage, they have more benefits, right? It's just the way it goes. And so they're slightly more expensive. But the average cost of benefits for an IMB for a salesperson is $28,000 a year. For their support, for their assistant, it's almost $22,000 a year. For fulfillment, it's $20,000 a year. And that's gone up 68% in the last 10 years, with the costs speeding up recently. And there's no end to that trend of it speeding up. And we live in a super tight, tough margin environment, extremely competitive. We have all sorts of, economies of scale challenges. We have all sorts of massive multi-million-dollar investments we need to make in marketing and technology. And on top of this, companies are being faced with millions of dollars of extra expense costs as the benefits that is really going to impact the viability of a lot of companies. And once again, that's where economy of scale comes, where bigger companies have an advantage over smaller companies. Bigger companies can offer more benefits at a more affordable price. It's just all goes to the equation. The only message I have here, because David, I have a lot of people kind of ask me about their benefits. And I always just say, look, approach it with gratitude. Your employer is struggling to pay these costs. I can tell you every year has huge focus in the boardroom. What are we going to do with benefits? How can we minimize the cost? How can we minimize what we're going to pass on the employees? How can we maximize the benefit? What are our choices? Should we self-insure? All these really difficult choices that come with lots of risk. And they spend a ton of time on it. And then it's so disheartening if the employees just go, this sucks. These are horrible. When the company's like, these are about to put me out of business. I'm doing the very best I can. Especially when it comes to like 401k matching, All that is so tricky. I know owners by nature want to be super generous. It's also they try to be competitive. This causes so much heartburn and so much. I can just tell. I've been in so many of these conversations. It causes so much concern. Are you doing the right thing? Are you making the right choices? Are you being a good shepherd for your people? And a lot of times it's all for naught. People are disgruntled anyway. Anyway, I just think people should understand kind of the data behind what affect what's going on with their benefits and benefit costs.
Yeah, I remember those days as well. Being in boardrooms and meetings where it had nothing to do with me, but being on the executive team, you hear all the different arguments and so on. And I think it goes back a little bit to my From the Gut that I did a couple weeks ago, the Walking Dead one. How many people have you unalived? Comparing that to firing people, and if you've never been in that seat to have to do that, then you it's tough to understand the toll that it can take on the person that's in that position, much like owners, CEOs, of companies. You you don't see the hardship and the toll that that takes on their psyche and their on them, to have to do that. But they got to be responsible business owners. I'm sure there's plenty of people that take advantage, plenty of business owners that take advantage and don't do right by their employees. But I have not seen any CEO or owner of a company that purposefully, you know, keeps more for themselves for at their employees' cost. So it's tough.
It's so hard, especially when you talk about 401k matching, because you want to be as generous as possible, but you also don't want to put the company in a bad position that where if you do the match and all of a sudden you're unprofitable that year, well, you really made a mistake. And so you want to be as generous as possible, but you have to be conservative enough to be a good steward of the business. And it does, I mean, there's a lot of time, as you know, David, spent on this topic,
Yeah.
and and a lot of resources through the year trying to hunt for better solutions. There just aren't better solutions right now, you know?
hmm I did have one kind of comment, but we said we were going to keep that topic short. You want me to ask? Gosh, I
Yeah.
keep burping. My apologies.
Yeah, yeah,
Bring
go
that
ahead.
chart up for me again, please. I'm just. You said the main reason is the top line is retail sales, and the
Mhm.
reason they're at the top is because they usually have more benefits, right?
Well, because they earn a lot more money.
Yeah. Why is this? So the bottom one is servicing. That's taken a decrease. Why is that?
Because servicing isn't a high excuse me for all our servicing friends, isn't necessarily a highly skilled, highly paid position. The people that run in servicing, that is a very administrative technology, it's very flat wages.
But it's the only one that started to go down.
Yeah, and that's I think because with technology, you need fewer employees and you just get more
Oh,
done. I think, and yeah, so it's just and you don't have bonuses, you just don't have all sorts of stuff that adds on to, a lot of those employees aren't getting to the max Social Security contribution. They're not doing the max 401k contribution, and that's why they're lower.
I
They may
see.
not be
I
doing the
see.
Cadillac, picking the Cadillac, health plan. They may not be doing all the dental, vision, all that stuff. All that stuff adds to the employer's cost.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, you want to talk about land scams?
I do want to talk about land scams, and so David, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I'm not embarrassed to say so, but I am. I've never used my license for anything related to real estate. But back in the day in California, you had to have a real estate license to be a loan broker, and so that's why I have one. I've maintained my license now for I don't know, 25 years, and so because of that, I'm on the mailing list for the California Department of Real Estate. And unlike most of my fellow real estate brethren, I actually read the stuff they send me for some unknown reason. And last week they sent out the most interesting advisory. And what it was is that DRE urges real estate agents to be on alert for vacant land scams. I'm like, that's really interesting. What does that mean? And what's happening is that there are these, criminals, the bad guys, are finding vacant land that has an absentee owner that has no mortgage on it, that is really not nobody has eyeballs on, and then they're claiming it as their own and selling it. And they're really sophisticated how they're selling it. They're going to use notaries that they know. They're going to use identity fraud, and some of the things that they're going to want in this to sell this property is they're looking for a quick sale. They're happy to go below market price. They'll take less for a buyer. Those are some of the demands that they're going to want. They don't want to meet in person. They miss in-person meetings. They pick their own closing attorney, which is a huge problem, and they want the proceeds wired to them, usually to a funky location. And this is a really big problem. This isn't a small problem; it's a big problem, and it's not just happening in California; it's happening everywhere. And so the DRE sent out, "Hey guys, just know these are the 10 characteristics." That doesn't mean that somebody's a crook. Doesn't mean you're a crook if the property is listed below market value. But if you start to get multiple of these things, look, you're really likely you might be dealing with fraud. And if so, you should to defend against those frauds, you should do a bunch of things, including demand to meet them in person. And if you meet them in person, demand that they give you an actual government issued ID. Ask
Can I
for
ask
a
a
tax.
question, Ron?
Yeah, please do.
What is the typical plot of land look like? Are we talking acres and acres? Is it farmland in the middle of nowhere? What kind of land are we talking about?
No, it could be an open lot in the middle of a city. It could be an infill lot, in a
Mm,
suburb. It could be anything. And what happens, and these people a lot of times are in a foreign country. They're just doing, research on the land and go, oh look, Mr. Smith owned that 3-acre plot in the middle of that rural area, and it's owned free and clear. They live in Ohio. Nobody's ever been near there. Nobody's going to tell nobody can tell if I sell that property. And so that's what they do. It's more of that, David. It's more that, as you drive around, you see open lots, it's more of that. And let's say you bought a lot, 25 years ago. Belinda and I, we have a couple lots. We have one in Colorado that we just went to the first time, and she's owned it for 40 years. We, we could have seen the city on that lot for all we knew, you know. And so that would be a really good, we'd be a really good target of that kind of thing.
yeah. Anyway, keep going on your bullet points.
Yeah, so just going down, the way you defend it is, like I said, make sure that you do an in-person meeting, see a government ID, get the most recent tax bill for the property. Make them give you a tax bill or a recent, utility bill, something related to the property. Make sure that they use a notary or a third-party verification system that you trust, not with them. Also the other thing is, here's what they say. It's really interesting. Do make sure you research who owns the property. Like, let's say you're the listing agent and the agent wants you to list the property. Make sure that you find the owner, even if it's the owner that came to you, and send them, some sort of signature required document confirming that they want to sell the property. Like, that's the very best
Mm,
thing. Like, send them a FedEx thing or send them electronic with a notary signature. Say, hey, I'm so happy to list your property. It's going to go great. Just confirm you want to move forward and get their signature, because that's the best way to uncover. Because those owners go, "What the heck?" The Smiths in Ohio are. What are you talking about? I'm not selling the property. But it was very interesting. And it happens in California, happens everywhere. So there you go. There's all sorts of bad guys out there, David.
have any major ones been caught yet?
It's so interesting you say that, because they're not great at catching these criminals. A lot of them are in foreign countries, so there's no way to catch them. There's only ways to stop them. It's not like, Bill and Bob, down the street in their basement figuring this out. But they're getting a little, the FBI largely handles these kind of things, and they're getting much better at it. Uh, you know, David, when we worked at another company together, they used to have the head FBI in charge of, real estate fraud. He'd come in and talk to us once a year at the manager's meeting. That was scary as crud. It was like, holy smokes. But they're getting better at catching it, but they're not really that great at it.
I was going to ask what would be the prosecutable crime, real estate fraud, and what would be the punishment?
Yeah, no, these are Class A felonies, and so they're going
Mm,
to have disgorgement, which means they have to give back any gains, or penalties on the losses, and then they're absolutely facing federal, criminal felony charges.
yeah, crazy.
I mean, you also got wire fraud. You got all sorts of stuff. You
All
got
kinds.
across state. I mean, if they wanted to, they could whack the heck out of you. Now, if you're in, Yugoslavia, they really can't do a lot about it. But
The U.S. government knows how to.
given recent events, you may disagree.
Yeah. Alrighty. McKenna's favorite subject, FHA.
This is an
Let's move
important
on to
topic.
that.
I know it can make some people's eyes roll, but McKenna, as we were explaining to you, FHA is the favored mortgage tool for oftentimes young people, first-time home buyers use to buy a house because they can put less down. They can have a little, not as good as credit. They have a little weaker income. It just allows for a much wider qualifying box. But to be able to do that, the FHA uses what's called the FHA Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund that actually covers that higher risk, but the borrowers have to pay into the fund, and they pay into the fund they do an upfront mortgage insurance premium, and they do a monthly premium pay. So there's two ways to pay into it. And back in the great financial crisis, this fund went bankrupt. They had to take $2 billion from the U.S. government. It was like $1.65 billion. They were definitely underfunded. And so from there, their mission is not to have to rely on the government in case they get in binds like that. And so they ridiculously raised those two premiums and to try to re-liquidate their insurance fund. Well, today that fund stands at $189 billion, $189 billion. Now, remember, in the worst crisis ever, they got underwater and had to borrow $1.65 billion. Well, now they have $189 billion in excess. As a matter of fact, the statutory requirement is they keep 2% ratio. That's a 2% fund, a ratio to their holdings, right? And right now they're at 12%. 12%. They're over 5 times their statutory requirement. And people go, oh, that's good. That must be good. That means if there was another crisis that they'd be self-sufficient. Well, that's true. Matter of fact, what they model is that we went through the same kind of crisis today that we went through during the great financial crisis or great financial recession, that would drop the fund's reserves down to 5%, still 2.5 times greater than their statutory limit. But the byproduct is that in order to build their insurance fund to that level, they've been really aggressive with their upfront mortgage insurance premium and their monthly insurance premium. And what that means is they're charging their borrowers more than they need to. And their whole mission is to help first-time home buyers, disadvantaged home buyers buy homes. Well, they're certainly not helping them if they're overcharging them. And in my opinion, it's time to probably start looking at lowering that upfront insurance, mortgage insurance premium, or lowering the monthly premium, or making cash out, or making rate and term refis free. You don't have to keep charging when you have all this money. And it seems to me that is, going against what their mission is. And this, by the way, and I'm not being political about this, the Biden, the Biden era drove this excess, but I understand it because they want to make sure everybody's covered and that the funds, that the fund is solid. It wasn't a bad choice, but now it's time to take your foot off the gas pedal, collecting so much, essentially insurance premiums when you're overfunded. There's no reason to do that. You should now start to just lower the cost so more people can afford to buy a house.
So at what
McKenna, that
point,
makes
what
sense?
number? I don't think she wants to
No, I
opine on
was
this one.
looking at all the buttons. No, I mean, yeah, that makes a lot more sense now because whenever you were first trying to explain it to me, it just went in one ear and right out the other. You were throwing all these acronyms at me and numbers and this, that, and the other, but it makes a lot more sense now as someone that doesn't know anything about.
I mean, can you imagine if you're going to buy a house and the first thing the government did is charge you 1.75%? That will take that much longer to get appreciation for you because you have to climb out of that hole first, and then they're charging you 0.55% per year. You're not going to get the same equity path that somebody uses a conventional loan is going to do. And so that's why it's unfair. Now, I think they need to be responsible. We're going to talk about the flip side of this and why they're doing it, David. But I think they need to be responsible, but I also think they need to serve their mission the best they can to help first-time home buyers and disadvantaged home buyers get into homes. David, you're about to say something.
So Yeah, at what point does it become deemed irresponsible or borderline fraudulent?
Well, the argument on their side, and David, I think we have a chart on this, is that we have rising FHA delinquencies right now, and in fact, this is crazy. Something like 8% of all FHA loans are delinquent today, and that compares to 2% for Fannie or Freddie and 3% over the total mortgage population. And McKenna, do we have that chart? Um, the next chart's going to show it. This is a climbing. The next chart. Yep, perfect. So we have this climbing delinquency rate, and so they're saying is, look, now's not the time to back off because we think we're coming up to another crisis. Let's be super well funded. And there may or may not be. I don't know, David. I don't know if I 100% agree with that. But can we talk
What are
about
the
two other
dates on the bottom?
the dates
I
on the
can't I
bottom?
can't quite read the dates on the bottom.
It goes from 2001 to 2025. These are October now, and the end of the fiscal year, which is October is the end of the fiscal year. So the last 25 years.
Hmm.
Now, David, there's two other big things that the article that we referenced earlier this week, which was a Housing Wire, is that FHA is doing two other things. They're very interesting. They are tightening their eligibility for loan modifications. In the past, you would get on a temporary loan mod to prove that you can afford it, and then they convert it to a permanent loan modification. And then if you got in distress again, you could do another one after 18 months, and you could really do one every 18 months about. Well, now they're changing that. They're extending that out to you can't do one within 24 months. But also, how are they going to restrict the borrower's ability to keep doing, redoing loan modifications? That they're going to be much tighter and move to foreclosure because they think they can save $1 billion a year for people who are just serial relisters and loan modifications when they really can't afford the homes. And loan modification essentially means you're paying less than owed. And so when you're paid less than owed, somebody has to pay that bill, and so they don't want to carry. They don't want the insurance fund to carry that any longer. So they're going to get a little tighter on that. The second thing that's changing, that they're considering changing, that they're working on, is really starting to figure out how to price and underwrite to layered risk. Layered risk has always been the bane of an underwriter's existence. Loan officers all the time say, "Hey, I got a DU approval. How come the underwriter isn't accepting it?" The underwriter goes, "Well, you don't understand the layered risk, nor does DU." And traditionally, David, layered risk or any of those things are big risk factors. It could be a high DTI, a high loan to value. It could be gift funds for closing. It could be a low credit score. It could be a non-owner occupier. There's all sorts of types of layers of risk. It could be an unstable job or a job without a long 2-year history. All those are layered risk, right? And once you get to 3 layers of risk, historically, those loans are something like 75% more likely to not perform. And
Hmm.
so if you're an independent mortgage bank, which I've worked at some really top quality, we just simply want to do layered risk because we knew if we didn't do layered risk that we would have virtually no exposure to bad loans. But FHA is now going, hey, look, we're really looking at this layered risk thing too now. And their layered risk, they're using what they're using is DTI. They're using credit score, and they're using down payment. So credit scores are actually at an all-time high. They're 679 right now for FHA loans, which is a 10-year high. The loan to value has stayed pretty stable. It's around 96 or 97% for FHA loans, but DTI has increased in the last 5 years from 40% to 45. And so what they're saying is when we have elevated, when those 3 factors, it's only 3 factors they look at: loan to value, DTI, and LTV. When all 3 are elevated, we're going to really reassess doing that loan, and if we do the loan, at what cost. And that's also, so they'll start to put a premium pricing on layered risk because that then they'll go into the insurance fund and offset the risk for the higher default rates. Just interesting inside baseball to look at the FHA Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund. But what do you think about all this, David?
Have you ever kind of worked in a non-sales position or head of sales position, like chief operating officer or something like that? Have you ever ran that? I know you owned your own company, but
Yeah, I have been in charge of op centers before. So in that regard, yes. or have
Okay.
them directly report
How
to me.
how different is one IMB to the next in regards to all of that layered risk?
A lot because
Or in
FHA.
regards to how they sorry, Ron, in regards to how they approach all the layered risk.
A lot, David. How companies their underwriting strategy for FHA and VA loans varies greatly. Now, it's starting to get gentrified because as we get better automated underwriting systems, more companies are relying on that. But there is still a lot of change, a lot of difference. Like there's overlays, David, as you know, and companies put in overlays like we're not going to go, for example, we're not going to go below 620. We're not going to underwrite below 580 or whatever. Like, even though now, currently there isn't a credit score minimum, right? Now, there may be with the investors you sell to, but there's not if you sell directly, right? But a company goes, I'm
Mhm.
not going to do a 550 loan for somebody with 100% financing and a low FICO score. I'm not going to do all those things. And each company has their own, their own risk tolerances. It's
Yeah,
100% different,
just in
David. Another thing, even with big companies, even with the banks. Like I remember, like we used to, like I'd interview somebody from Wells Fargo, and I'm like, "Hey, how do you guys underwrite?" And they're like, "We just follow the DU findings." I'm like, "No, you don't. You have
mm,
proprietary underwriting. Your DU findings are what your company put into it for you." And I'd have to compare.
right.
Here's my DU findings to their DU findings, and they'd be shocked that they had overlays. But a big company can hide it in the technology, where smaller companies, loan officers get direct access to the guidelines and go, "Hey, that's not there." But there's a lot of even today. There's a lot of difference, David.
Yeah. Two of my best friends are either are or were no, they were chief operating officers at large IMB. And what a I know it's kind of collective decisions that are made with the overlays that they have, but what a important position. I can imagine the success or failure of a company can lean pretty heavily on that.
It's so hard because you want to do loans for every eligible borrower, right? You want
Right.
to do sustainable loans, period. You don't want to turn one loan away that's a good loan. But then again, you
Hmm.
don't want to put a homeowner in a place where they can't afford to make the payment or aren't capable of making the payments. That's probably one of the worst experiences you can have in life is having a foreclosure and all that stuff. So we also have to
Hmm.
protect them, even against sometimes against their own wishes. So it's so hard, and then it becomes a competitive problem because if you're not doing those type of loans, some loan officers don't want to work for you, or they want to go work for somebody else. But then once you start doing the really crummy loans, that becomes your brand, and you attract a lot of those crummy loans, and it just becomes it's a harder part of the business to manage. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We went way over on that one. Our next two topics are they both kind of, oh, no. The next one, the word of the year. Forgot about this one.
All right, David. At the end of the year, everybody was doing word of the year. I know I did word of the year. We talked about our word of the year. I think it's awesome. I think the word of the year is the seed to good business planning or life planning. Here we're sharing a Visual Capitalist visual graphic on the, I think, five most popular dictionary online sites, what their word of the year was for the last 5 years. David, first, before we go on to, relate this to mortgage, any of these words jump out at you as kind of funny or any years that were weird?
Um, yes, McKenna, let's make that as big as you can. Could you please? These old eyes. Maybe my word of the year is loss of eyesight. That's more than one word.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, there were a couple that stood out to me. Oh gosh, NFT. Uh, 6-7. Still,
I don't even
still
know what
don't know
Riz
if I
is.
fully.
What is
I
Riz?
still don't know if I fully get the 6-7 thing.
Yeah. McKenna, what is Riz? Do you know? Is that a young person's word that I don't even know?
So it's short for charisma. And so it's just like a shortened word. Like so if you say it to someone like, "Oh, you got Riz," it just means that you're charismatic. But it's usually
Oh.
used in terms of like flirting or like being cool with friends and like that kind of thing.
Oh, I'm gonna try to use that. I'll integrate it into my try to integrate it. I'll text you when I integrate it into my conversations the next
Okay,
day.
another one that stands out to me, one of the most overused words in the last handful of years when it comes to building a brand on social media is authentic. One of the most
Yeah.
overused words.
Yeah.
Is that
And
it?
Yeah.
yeah, it's 2023 and the second one down, the yellow. It was just, I don't, I, you know, I've never been hardcore on that. You need to be your authentic self, as like a social media coach or whatever, because that should just be a given, right? And if you're trying too hard to be authentic, I think it's a slippery slope where you almost become inauthentic, you know? Because that's what every social media guru or coach was like. You got to be your authentic self, which is true, yes, but I don't think you need to say that to people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do. Although I think, David, that there is an epidemic of people trying to pretend to be other people or like other people,
Yeah.
when really, if they this were themselves, it'd be much better. But that is an overused word. What's parasocial? Like it's Cambridge
We might need
Dictionary's word of the year.
we
What is
might
parasocial?
we might need McKenna for all of these, Ron.
Okay, I'll stay on. So, parasocial, it's talking about the types of relationships that fans have with celebrities or influencers, and like the way that people will describe, like, say I follow like Millie Bobby Brown is the first person that came up to my mind. I follow Millie Bobby Brown on Instagram, and people start talking about her, and I'm like, no, that's not her. Like, she's like this and this person, and like she's not like that. It's a parasocial relationship where like this random person on the internet thinks they know this celebrity and thinks that like
Mm.
in some sort of way like that's like their friend, or like they know them, like it's somehow a personal thing because they know a lot about them on the internet.
I think I followed that about as closely as you followed the FHA Mutual Trust Fund.
It's just the idea of fans thinking that they know celebrities and who they are, and so they have a parasocial relationship with them.
I gotcha. Well,
And it's
I
always
think I
used in a negative connotation. Like you should not have parasocial relationships with
assume
people.
so. Changing words. I was had some people from out of town. Whenever we have people from out of town and they come from a state that doesn't have an In-N-Out Burger, we take them to In-N-Out Burger. And so we're at In-N-Out Burger, and I was surprised to learn that they do not use the number 67, because it causes such a goofy disruption in the restaurant. They just
It's because
eliminated that number.
teenagers scream whenever they call it out. Don't ask
That's
me
hilarious.
to explain what 6-7 means because I don't know. That
Yeah,
one's after my time.
I got a loose understanding, but no respect. David, we talked about what word would, McKenna, we might be done with you. What word represents your 2026? We don't have to say it here, but it's fun to do that. But you know what I did, David, and I thought we'd kick around is, okay, if we were going to pick a word for the mortgage industry in total, just in whole, and by the way, you can say the industry or you can apply it to your view or your experiences. What word would you pick for the last 5 years, and what word would you pick for this year?
Last 5 years or last 3 years?
Let's go. Well, let's do 5 years because that gets us back to the beginning of the pandemic.
5 years, I would say bipolar.
Well, no. You can go through each year. What would be 2020? What would be your word for 2020?
2020?
Yeah.
I'm going to use 2 words, but shock and awe.
Oh, I like that. I would love to write a book about 2020. I would just say insane. And David, just think, we had to mobilize entire large companies from working at the office to working at home in a highly technically sophisticated environment, right? Something that never been done. We had to move thousands of people from a work center to their home and give them computers and access that had to connect with hundreds of different, cogs in the technology flywheel. And then all companies nearly went bankrupt, and that there was zero business. And then, the government started to really dramatically cut interest rates to zero, which is positive. But that nearly made the bankruptcies worse because all these mortgage companies had margin calls, where they'd hedged these loans at X, and now they were at 8X, and they had to pay them. Bless you, they had to pay the margin. Right now, it works. The margin call is an interesting thing because if rates dramatically improve and you're sitting on a high rate, you got to pay the margin call, but you're going to get paid more on the backside. But you have to fund the margin, right? So, and then we went from a $1.5 trillion market to a $4.2 trillion market in just 90 days. Like that is all insane. And we had to hire, most companies went 2x, 3x on their headcount, all while working from home during a pandemic where people are dying, all while the finances are going banana nutty. It was just literally insane. I mean, I don't know however else to say it.
I've got a word for 2021.
What's that?
Actually, again, it's 2 words. It can be a word or a phrase, but the 2021 signing bonus.
Well, David, that matches my word kind of, because my word for 2021 is harvest. Once you got through the insanity of 2020 and you kind of got stabilized, and then you had to just jack rates up just so you can, that's the only way you can control volume that was killing you. And that was just harvest as much as you can, harvest, answer one more phone call, take one more loan, do one more thing. This harvest is gorge yourself. I couldn't even use gorge, but it was harvest. And so it was probably the greatest year of harvesting that the mortgage industry has ever seen, and did really good, did really well, but while helping, tens of millions of Americans get these unbelievable interest rates that, are serving them well today. So I would use harvest. How about 2022?
Was it late 2022 when the market started to crumble?
Yep.
It was late 2022.
Yep.
So that's a tough
It
one.
started to slow. We started to slow the first 2 quarters because everybody could refinance, already had, and houses already appreciated 50%. So the market was slowing, but interest rates started to, they started doing increases at the end of 2022.
Yeah.
And
So I'm going to
what would you
say,
call it?
I'm going to say cold sweat.
I would say shift.
Yeah.
My word was shift. We shifted. The market shifted dramatically. And that got us to, now we're going to go from, a $3.7 trillion market to a $1.5 trillion market in like 60 days, which leads us to 2023. And, which you already had the cold sweat, you could call that, you could go pucker could be a word, but for 2023, what was the word of the year?
Diarrhea.
So good. I love your words, David. What I would say?
I didn't pre-think these.
Really?
Yeah.
What I would say? I would say right size. Isn't that what everybody said? Right size? You had to deflate the balloon. You had to go from that. You were still structured for a $4.4 trillion market, and you had to let out all the air to get it down to $1.5 trillion market. And it was unbelievably painful, but that's what dominated the market. And the faster you could right size, the more, the stronger your viability was. And that's just dominated. Boom, the whole time. Right size, right size, right size. And then that gets me really to 2024. What do you think?
Waiting room.
Oh, I like that. You know what I would pick? Level up. Because in 2024, we really had done this. If we were in the loan business, we had really for 18 years ran a downhill race. Essentially, rates were improving all 18 years. The economy was basically improving. Houses were, prices were increasing. It was just easy time to be in the business. And so most of the people that have been in the business have never ran in an adverse market. So all of a sudden we're in this adverse market at the end of 2023 and 2024. And you're like, holy crap, I'm getting my lunch stolen every day. And there's a recognition, I got to get a hell of a lot better if I'm going to make it. There's a whole bunch of people that aren't going to make it in this business. I got to get a whole lot better. I'm not good enough. I got to level up. I got to start to attack the market and proactively prospect, because a lot of loan officers have never done any more prospecting than answering the phone, essentially, right? Like, oh my God, I got to learn how to do sales. Like I never learned the sales process. I got to go learn sales. I got to go prospect. I need to do referral partners. That guy's kicking my ass. They have better rates. They have better programs. And it was just then I think loan officers finally realized that it was time to get professional and really level up. And that's what I really think that's a good word. That's one of my favorite words for all these years. It's my only 2 words. All right, that gets us to the last year. I want to say this year, but it's last year, 2025.
Yeah. All of mine are phrases or more than one word, but I would say
there's no rules.
2025. Yeah, the hard part's over.
Yeah. See,
So, it,
2025. Go ahead.
go ahead. I was
No, please.
I was just going to point to the fact that we talked about survivors benefits earlier. So hard
Yeah.
part's over.
See, I disagree with that.
Mm,
And politely disagree. We're just getting to the hard part, David. And 2025 was about scale. It was about
mm.
the global apps, the super platforms, the mega servicers started to just absolutely crush market share, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that's what dominated the news, right? The Rockets of the world, United Wholesale Mortgages of the world, the servicers. I mean, just crazy, right? And they ate unbelievable market share that we now have to figure out how to contend with, and it has totally changed everything. And when you talk about scale, the economy of scale with technology, with marketing, if you're outside those walls, you have an uphill battle, and you better be damn good. Now, you can win if you're damn good, or you understand what your value prop is, and you match to the market, but that was a massive shift in 2025, you know?
I think we might be wearing two different hats, maybe slightly. I think my perspective is coming from an individual loan officer, and your hat might be more of a company perspective, maybe a little bit. Was that your perspective?
I would say I'm more of a industry perspective, but that could be company-wide, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was trying to put myself in the seat of a loan officer, individual loan officer, to where I think for the loan officer, and I said the hard part is over. I'm not saying it's easy now, but I
Yeah.
think the toughest part is over, especially in the fact with the decline in LOs. Um, excuse me, and yeah. So anyway,
And so, David, I'm not saying you're wrong on any of these things,
sure.
and yeah, at all. Okay, let's wrap this up. Let's go to what would you pick for a year for 2026 for the industry?
For the industry,
Yeah.
um, I don't have a word or a phrase. I've got a sound bite.
All right.
You ready? Dum
Yeah.
dum 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 dum. That's the little theme song from Terminator. AI is gonna break shit.
Yeah, you know what word or essence of a word I want to pick is customer. Like
Mm,
all those words like I just listed for what I thought the industry word was for the last 5 years were all inward focused, right? They were all okay. We had to deal with an insane changes, and then we had to figure out our harvest, and then there was a shift, and then we had to right size, and then we had to level up, and then we had to face these mega platforms, this market share scale problem. But at some point, the person who's going to win is this unbelievably focus on giving the customer what they want, right? And
yeah.
that all their language starts with and ends with, is this good for the customer? Have I helped the customer? Have I made this a better experience for the customer? Have I given more value? And that has to shift a little bit from these economies of scale and all this stuff to how do I delight the customer every single time? And that's this figuring out how much technology versus human do we need, and I think that's what's going to dominate the year.
How is that? How do you see that being this year versus any other year, though?
Well, because a lot of years you didn't care about the customer. I mean, like nobody cared about the customer in 2020. You had 80 million customers calling you 25 seconds a day, every minute of the day. You didn't care, right? And
I
then when
bet you
you're
if you were talking directly to a loan officer, they'd argue with you.
Uh, they would argue, but it wouldn't be. They didn't necessarily behave differently when they were gorging
Yeah,
themselves. They weren't trying to build elite customer service platforms. They were just trying to get funnels to take as much business as possible.
yeah.
Now, I would definitely think that we started to focus on customers a little bit more, but right now we focus on technology that's made it easier for us, while tangentially making it easier for the customer versus figuring out technology that delights the customer, right?
Right. Okay, we are 8 minutes over on that one.
Whew.
That was a good one though. I enjoyed it. We've got one more, and we're talking about. We usually do a segment where it's like a AI tip of the week. This is definitely AI, but we're rolling up two different topics in this one. So let's pull up the slide. We're talking about shopping and we're talking about flights. Ron, this is your thing. Let's do it.
Yeah. So there's two things we're going to talk about. First, I think Gemini rolled out. Do we have the McKenna the screen with the Gemini screen that says "Dream bigger, pay less"? This is the new Gemini service. It's an AI service to help you book flights. I have the website up in front of me right now. It's a pretty sophisticated website that can help you kind of plan and book all your travel. And McKenna, as you were showing, the next slide is some of the prompts you may put into Gemini to help it book flights for you. This is just explained it too. Can you go to the next one? I think is the prompts. So these are the things you might ask in prompt Gemini. Hey, try to find me direct flights from LA to Paris under $500 for a week in February, and then it will list every flight it can find from every airline. Super good. You can learn how to use this tool and become a really, really good travel agent for yourself. You can also set it on repeat so that it keeps searching daily and updating your search for you. There's so many things you can do with this. It's just one of the new AI tools. David, do you see yourself using this?
I do. I don't fly as much as I used to. You're on a flight every 3 days, so I can see you being a heavy user of this.
I'm already a
you've got
heavy
another,
user of AI and travel right now. Glenn and I are both
yeah,
heavy users.
right.
Yeah.
Bel-
So
Belinda is as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
Especially when you go to, especially when you go to foreign countries where it's impossible to understand what to do, where to go.
right.
And so we definitely do a ton of AI research, 100%. It doesn't always work. A matter of fact, I got in an argument with Gemini the other day. My brother-in-law was here visiting. He's from Alaska. He's flying back to Anchorage, and with Gemini, I go, "Hey, we're not familiar with this airline. What's the weight limit on the suitcases?" And it gave me the wrong weight limit, which caused a problem at the airport. But then I went
Mhm.
back to Gemini and said, "Hey, what's wrong? That's not what their policy is." And then essentially said I just didn't ask him a specific enough question, and we got into an argument. Gemini didn't want to take responsibility, nor did
Did you
I.
curse at it?
No, I don't curse at AI at all. I'm very polite to AI. Um, all right. You want to go to the next one?
Yes.
The next one's a ChatGPT tool. And it is, do we have can we go to the, McKenna, to the screenshot of ChatGPT screen? Thank you. So ChatGPT, first, I like this one because I don't know if everybody uses these functions. It's much like when you use the customize function, which I love. David, you and I both love using it. But first time we're exposed to it, we're like, I didn't even know this existed. And the same thing here. Whenever you hit this plus button, I always just think I'm going to add a file. But you actually have quite a few different options here, whether you're going to pick an image or do deep research or pick agent mode. But there's also shopping research. And if you pick that shopping research, it actually becomes a much better shopping tool. And the whole thing here is it knows that it has to do internet searches. Like if you go into just a regular prompt and go, hey, can you tell me what the best computer is? It will give me based on its stored knowledge what it is. But if you go into a shopping research and you ask it to go do something, it's going to go get live quotes from all these different places and live reviews, and it's going to get you a much more comprehensive answer. And that's, I think, what the next screen shows is how would you maybe give us some prompts if you wanted to be your shopping tool. And so this is relatively new on ChatGPT. So you've seen here, I want to buy a laptop under $1,200 for work. By the way, David, I did this very thing, when I was converting to the failed experiment with Mac. I got onto, I was using, I think I used Gemini. They'll go, Gemini, here's how I use my computer. I can't stand Macs. I can't stand it for these 10 reasons. But I was actually using Gemini to help me, troubleshoot why the Mac wasn't working because it's a POC. But anyway, and so once I got done, I'm done. I just gotta go get a computer, and I go, this is how I use it. I use it. This is what I need. This features I want. This is that, and it gave me a wonderful comparison list. With links to everything. It was great. It was like, hey, here's the 3 best computers for you. Here's why. Here's where they're available. Here, this is on sale right now. It might be time to buy. It was so comprehensive. It was great. And I wasn't even using ChatGPT's shopping tool, which would even be better.
McKenna, go back to the last screen, please. I just pulled this up, and yeah, Ron, I when you hit that plus button, I don't think I've ever clicked on any of those other than adding photos and files. But if you click on the three dots at the bottom where it says more, I've got it on my screen. You can add sources, you can study and learn, web search, a canvas, and then you can explore apps. So I'm a heavy Photoshop user, so you can actually use Photoshop within ChatGPT. So yeah, I'm going to be using this a lot more going forward.
Yeah, that's a really good prompt. See, I love learning things about our AI tools that I'm not familiar with, and that's what this was. So, two new tools, whether you want to use Gemini and Google for a travel agent, or you want to use ChatGPT for a shopping agent. The other thing that came out today, David, yesterday, last night, was at the CES show, was ChatGPT now has a new health platform, which maybe we'll talk about
Health.
next week. Complete health.
Ooh,
It's unbelievable. There's a
yeah,
waiting
I
list to get it
saw.
right now.
I spent some time watching the CEO of Nvidia introducing the new little cute robots that they have that look a little bit like Wall-E.
Yeah,
So they've got some good stuff going on with AI and robots.
that's crazy. All right, David, this has been a great show. Thank you. First one of the year.
Yeah, we start with a cheers, we end with a cheers.
And we end with beer. I'm almost out.
Hey, if you've joined us, we appreciate it, whether live or later down the line. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next Thursday. See ya.
See you, everybody.